As mayor, I'll build 200,000 new, permanently affordable, union-built, rent-stabilized homes over the next 10 years.
New York City Housing Authority announced today its plan to tear down 2 public housing complexes and build new ones for residents.
Zohran Mamdani's landslide victory in New York City's mayoral race has electrified the political landscape, particularly for renters, with his promise to freeze the rent for nearly 2 million tenants in rent-stabilized apartments. But while this housing pledge helped propel him to victory, it is only a fraction of the larger, far more complicated housing crisis Mamdani will inherit when he takes office in January. The issues at play are multifaceted and will require swift strategic decision-making from Mamdani and his administration. From the fate of public housing developments in disrepair to the battle over short-term rentals, from the financial peril facing nonprofit affordable housing providers to the impact of looming federal funding cuts.
New York City officials say these buildings need $31 billion to repair heating, elevators, and basic maintenance.
Mamdani is set to confront a series of unprecedented challenges. These issues will define his mayoralty and his ability to make good on his promises to New Yorkers. One of the most pressing issues Mamdani will face is the dire state of New York City's public housing system. The city is home to roughly 180,000 public housing units across 335 developments. These are the lifeline for the city's most vulnerable residents, providing affordable housing to those who need it most. However, the New York City Housing Authority, NYCHA, which oversees these buildings, has struggled for decades to provide decent living conditions.
My question is, what would the cost be to go in the buildings, building by building, and fix what's run down?
At first, they wanted to do just that, but the developers and the housing authorities say what became really clear.
The problems are numerous. Persistent leaks, outdated plumbing, pest infestations, and heating outages are a common experience for many residents. Even more troubling, some buildings are literally falling apart, with structural failures and crumbling infrastructure threatening tenants' safety. The scale of the repairs needed is staggering, around $78 billion, according to NYCHA's latest estimates. To make matters worse, NYCHA's budget has been in a constant state of crisis, exacerbated by years of underfunding and bureaucratic inefficiencies. While Mayor Eric Adams accelerated a plan to privatize many NYCHA developments, the hope was to leverage private management to unlock federal funding for repairs. The move has drawn sharp criticism from progressive factions who believe that public control is vital to protecting tenants' rights. Mamdani, however, has made it clear that he will focus on addressing NYCHA's crumbling infrastructure, pledging in his victory speech to work tirelessly to make lights shine again in the hallways of NYCHA developments where they have long flickered. But with a backlog of maintenance projects and a lack of available funding, this ambitious pledge may be harder to fulfill than Mamdani might hope. If Mamdani's first months in office are defined by housing battles,
This is the housing crisis in 2025. Unless you're wealthy, it's basically impossible to find or stay in a home that you can afford. It's time city government actually did something about this.
one of the most contentious will likely be the saga of the Elizabeth Street Garden in Nolita. For over a decade, city officials have sought to turn this iconic community garden into affordable housing. But it has become a flashpoint in the larger conversation about urban development and green spaces. The garden, a vibrant oasis in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood, has become a symbol of community resistance to development that could displace longtime residents, local activists, backed by high-profile celebrities, fought back fiercely against the city's efforts, filing lawsuits and organizing protests to stop the project. Despite losing several legal battles, the garden's defenders have succeeded in convincing the Adams administration to abandon its plans for now. But Zohran Mamdani has signaled his intent to revive the effort to build affordable housing on the site, igniting a renewed fight over whether the need for housing should take precedence over preserving valuable green spaces. Mamdani's move to evict the garden will likely face fierce opposition from community groups and environmental activists.
The mayor is single-handedly focused on destroying this garden and ignoring a number of other opportunities for building more affordable housing on city-owned land.
The nonprofit group that manages the garden has already stated that it will continue to fight any attempt to destroy the space, calling it a false choice between affordable housing and community gardens. In the eyes of many, this issue encapsulates a deeper dilemma in urban development, the balance between the need for more affordable housing and the desire to protect community spaces from commercial and political pressures. New York City has long been grappling with the impact of short-term rentals on the housing market, particularly those listed on platforms like Airbnb. The city's strict regulations, which effectively banned rentals of less than 30 days outside of hotels, were intended to keep housing units from being taken off the market.
Register with the city. The law also says if you're renting out an entire apartment, it must be for 30 days or more and limited to 2 guests,
limiting the availability of affordable long-term rentals for residents. But 2 years after the crackdown, it's clear that these regulations have not resulted in lower rents. In fact, critics of the policy argue that they've had little effect on affordability while making it harder for tourists to visit the city. With the World Cup scheduled to take place in New York next year, Airbnb and some property owners are pushing a new bill in the city council that would allow short-term rentals in single and two-family homes. Mamdani has previously supported restrictions on short-term rentals, arguing that they help ensure that housing remains available to local residents. But with pressure from the hospitality industry and concerns about the economic benefits of tourism, he will have to decide whether to double down on the current policy or loosen restrictions to allow more flexibility in the market.
What do you think of this plan, George?
Excellent. I'm for 150%.
Not all residents are on board, but the vast majority voted in favor of a plan that will eventually tear all this down and build them new homes.
The debate will have serious implications for the city's housing supply. If short-term rentals continue to occupy valuable housing stock, it could further exacerbate the city's rental affordability crisis. On the other hand, loosening restrictions could open the door to new economic opportunities for homeowners and landlords. Mamdani's challenge will be balancing the demands of residents who need affordable housing with the concerns of those who rely on short-term rental income. As Mamdani prepares to freeze rents for rent-stabilized apartments, one of the most vocal groups opposing his policies will be landlords, particularly those who manage properties outside of the city's most central neighborhoods. Many of these landlords, some of whom own buildings that are already in financial distress, argue that freezing rent would push their buildings even deeper into debt. Humberto Lopez, a prominent landlord with a portfolio of 100 buildings.
Where do they get their breakfast from? Where do they eat their bagel at, right? Now they're happy that they're gonna come here to a place that makes it fresh.
Has formed the Gotham Housing Alliance to rally landlords against rent-freezing policies. The alliance has grown rapidly, with over 400 members, and it is already lobbying in Albany and Washington, D.C., to stymie any of Mamdani's policies that could negatively impact their bottom line. For landlords like Lopez, the financial pressure is mounting. Many buildings are struggling to keep up with rising costs, including insurance premiums, utilities, and maintenance. As operating costs rise, rent freezes could make it even harder to stay afloat. While some landlords argue that the rent freeze proposal could cause widespread neglect of buildings, leaving tenants living in unsafe, unsanitary conditions, tenant advocates contend that the freeze is necessary to protect renters from skyrocketing rent increases. The standoff between landlords and tenants is sure to intensify as Mamdani's rent-freezing initiative comes closer to reality. The mayor-elect will need to manage these competing interests carefully, balancing the need for rent control with the financial stability of buildings that provide essential housing.
New York City is a majority tenant town, but too often our government works for the landlords.
Beyond local politics, Mamdani will also need to grapple with the larger issue of federal funding cuts. Under the Trump administration, several vital federal programs that New York City relies on to fund affordable housing initiatives have been slashed, and the current administration shows no signs of reversing this trend. Programs like the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which provides subsidies to low-income tenants, are at risk. If the federal government pulls back even further, the city may need to find alternative funding sources to fill the gap. This could mean an even greater reliance on local resources, stretching the city's budget and placing additional pressure on already overburdened programs like CityFEPS, which helps more than 136,000 New Yorkers avoid homelessness. City officials are already bracing for these cuts, and Mamdani will need to be prepared for tough budgetary decisions. How will he respond if the federal government reduces or eliminates funding for affordable housing programs? Will he push for greater investment from private developers or find creative solutions to fund the growing needs of the city's most vulnerable residents? Another significant issue is the financial distress faced by nonprofit housing organizations that operate some of the city's most critical affordable housing stock. According to a recent report by the Association for Neighborhood and Housing Development, ANHD, over 63,000 affordable apartments in New York City are currently operating at a loss. Rising operating costs, such as higher insurance premiums, maintenance, and utility costs, are eating into the already thin margins of these nonprofit operators.
It is no surprise that Mayor Adams is using his final weeks and months to cement a legacy of dysfunction and inconsistency.
As costs rise, tenants in these buildings are seeing deteriorating living conditions. Mold, pest infestations, plumbing issues, and inconsistent heating are just some of the challenges residents are facing. For nonprofits already struggling to maintain these properties, the pressure is mounting to either raise rents or seek additional funding. However, with many tenants already burdened by high rents, increasing prices may not be a viable solution. The city needs to find a way to provide more support to nonprofit operators, who are often unable to compete with the private market in terms of funding and resources. For Mamdani, preserving the stability of these buildings will be a critical part of his agenda. Finally, Mamdani's goal of building 200,000 new affordable housing units over the next decade remains a massive and ambitious challenge. While Mayor Eric Adams has prioritized new housing construction, reports indicate that much of the new development is out of reach for New Yorkers with low to moderate incomes. In fact, a large chunk of the new apartments being built cater to those making $104,000 annually or more, well above the income level for the city's most in-need residents. Mamdani has promised to change that, vowing to ensure that a larger portion of new construction will be genuinely affordable to lower-income residents. But meeting this goal will require overcoming significant hurdles, from zoning restrictions to developer resistance, and securing funding to support affordable projects. Zohran Mamdani's path to fulfilling his housing promises will be filled with obstacles, political, financial, and logistical.
Basically what I do with my second one, just not let her on the floor. It sucks, but just she'll only be able to crawl on the bed because I don't want her on this floor.
As the housing crisis in New York City continues to spiral, Mamdani will have to make difficult decisions about rent control, development, and the preservation of public and nonprofit housing. How he navigates these challenges will shape the future of housing in New York City for generations to come. The stakes couldn't be higher. For New Yorkers, the wait is over. The fight for affordable housing is about to enter its next chapter.